He told everyone I was losing my mind. Then my father pulled back the blue blanket, and Caleb stopped smiling.
The day my father pulled the blue blanket away from my legs, my husband finally stopped smiling. Dad had entered our bedroom with 2 military police officers behind him. My mother and younger brother stood frozen near the door. I was sitting on the edge of the bed, in a thin white nightgown, one hand over my pregnant stomach, while my husband, Caleb, kept telling everyone that I had fallen down the stairs. Then Dad lifted the blanket. The room went silent. There were dark bruises across both of my legs. More covered my arms and shoulder. Caleb tried to explain, but for the first time in our marriage, nobody was listening to him. What they did not know was that I had spent 3 months preparing for that exact moment. My name is Olivia Mercer. I was 20, 9 and 7 months pregnant. Caleb and I lived in military housing near Fort Liberty, North Carolina. He was an Army captain with a spotless record and a talent for making everyone trust him. That included my father. Dad had retired from the Army as a colonel. When Caleb asked to marry me, Dad said I had chosen a man who understood honor. For a while, I believed that too. Caleb never started with shouting. He started with helpful things. He paid the bills because pregnancy made me tired. He drove me to appointments and answered my phone while I slept. He even asked my mother not to visit too often because he said I needed peace. Every decision sounded loving when he explained it. By my 5th month, he controlled our money, my keys, my phone, and almost every conversation with my family. The first bruise appeared on my wrist after I tried to take my phone from his hand. Caleb apologized and claimed he had grabbed me because I nearly tripped. Then he cried, and somehow I ended up comforting him. After that, strange things began happening. I woke up dizzy, even after a full night's sleep. Once, I found my car keys inside the freezer. Another time, I woke up on the floor beside the bed with a bruise on my hip. Caleb said I had been sleepwalking. He began taking notes in a small black book. Whenever I asked about it, he said he was recording my symptoms for the doctor. At my next prenatal appointment, Caleb spoke before I could answer. He told the doctor I had been confused, emotional, and reckless. He joked about hiding the car keys from me, and the doctor gave me a concerned look. I remember thinking, this is how a person disappears while she is still alive. On the drive home, I told Caleb I wanted to stay with my parents for a few days. His hands tightened around the steering wheel. He said my father had never respected him. He said my mother was filling my head with doubts. Then he showed me a message that appeared to come from Dad. It said, "You chose this marriage. Stop running home every time life gets difficult." The words crushed me. Dad and I had always been close. Caleb held the phone in front of me and said, "See, even he thinks you are unstable." I stopped asking to leave. 2 weeks later, I discovered the first crack in Caleb's story. I was folding laundry when I found a second phone, hidden inside one of his old Army boots. I expected to find evidence of an affair. In a strange way, that would have been easier. Instead, I found messages between Caleb and his mother, Denise. Denise had moved into our guest room after saying she was helping with the baby. The messages showed that she was really watching me. Caleb asked whether I had finished my tea and if I seemed sleepy. Denise answered, "Give it another 20 minutes. My hands began to shake. I kept scrolling. They discussed my grandmother's trust, which would become fully mine when I turned 30, and the lake house she had left me. Most frightening of all, they discussed getting me declared unable to manage my finances before my birthday. One message from Caleb said, "Once the doctor documents the confusion, she will sign whatever I put in front of her." Denise replied, "Do it before the baby comes." Afterward, Everyone will blame the hormones. I heard the floor creak outside the bedroom. I put the phone back inside the boot and stood up just as Denise entered. She looked at the laundry, then at my face. "Are you feeling all right?" she asked. Her voice sounded sweet. Her eyes did not. That night, I poured my tea into the bathroom sink when nobody was looking. I pretended to become sleepy anyway. Caleb helped me upstairs, tucked me into bed, and sat beside me until I closed my eyes. Then he whispered, "Soon, Liv. This will be easier." I waited until he left before I let myself breathe. I needed proof. Caleb had already convinced a doctor that I was confused, controlled my phone, and had access to our money. If I accused him without evidence, he would call it another episode. So I began acting exactly as helpless as he wanted me to be. I apologized for things I had not forgotten. I thanked him for managing the money and stopped arguing when he took my keys. His relief made him careless. My brother, Noah, had given me a digital recorder years earlier. I found it in a box and hid it inside a decorative pillow. For 3 weeks, it recorded everything. It captured Caleb telling Denise to put one of her prescription sleeping pills in my tea. It captured them discussing a loan against my lake house and Caleb practicing my signature on a legal pad. And one night, it captured the truth about my family. Denise asked why my parents had stopped calling. Caleb laughed and said he had blocked their numbers on my phone. He had created a fake contact under my father's name. Every cruel message I thought Dad had sent came from Caleb. The next morning, I did something dangerous. I asked Denise to take me to the pharmacy. While she argued with the pharmacist about a coupon, I borrowed the store phone and called Noah at work. The moment Noah answered, I almost broke down. Instead, I said the emergency phrase Dad had taught us as children. "The porch light is blue." Noah went quiet. Then he said, "Are you in immediate danger?" I told him not yet. I asked him to find the old laptop in our grandmother's storage locker. It's still connected to my private cloud account, and Caleb did not know it existed. Noah could leave messages in the account's draft folder without calling my phone. That evening, I told Caleb I wanted to look at baby names online. He returned my laptop for 1 hour and sat across from me while I searched. I smiled at lists of names while secretly opening my cloud account in another window. Noah had left a message in the draft folder. It read, "Me believe you. We are coming. Tell us when." For the first time in months, I did not feel alone, but I could not let my family rush in. Caleb was an active duty officer, and he kept a firearm locked in the closet. I needed the authorities involved and enough evidence that he could not charm his way out. Over several nights, I uploaded the recordings, photographed the forged signature, and copied loan papers that listed my lake house as collateral. The signature at the bottom looked almost perfect. Almost. My grandmother had taught me to write my last name with an open loop in the letter M. Caleb had closed it. That tiny mistake proved the signature was not mine. Then I found the final part of his plan. Inside the black notebook, Caleb had written a timeline. First, document my confusion. Second, obtain temporary financial authority. Third, refinance the lake house. Fourth, move Denise into it after the baby was born. Beside the final step, he had written, Olivia to treatment facility if necessary. He was not planning to leave me. He was planning to erase me. I sent every page to Noah. My family took the evidence to an attorney and the military police. Because we lived in base housing and Caleb was an officer, Army investigators were notified. They still needed a safe moment to approach me. That moment came sooner than any of us expected. Caleb received an alert from the bank. Someone had asked questions about the lake house loan. Noah had been careful, but the bank contacted Caleb because his phone number was on the application. He came home furious. He demanded my laptop. When I claimed not to know where it was, he grabbed my arm and asked who I had called. When I refused to answer, he shoved me onto the bed. I protected my stomach and tried to stand. He grabbed me again. I kicked the bedside table, and the lamp crashed to the floor. Denise ran in. She did not ask if I was hurt. She told Caleb the neighbors might have heard. That was when I realized the recorder was still running inside the pillow. I looked at Caleb and deliberately said, "You drugged me, forged my name, and kept me from my family. You will not get the lake house." He leaned close and answered, "Nobody will believe you. Look at you." Those words became the clearest evidence on the recording. Our neighbor, Sergeant Maria Ortiz, heard the crash and called the military police. She had already noticed that I no longer walked outside alone. My family was already near the base, waiting for investigators to arrange a welfare check. Dad had attended a military memorial that morning, so he was still wearing his dress uniform. That is why everyone arrived together. Caleb put me back on the bed and covered my legs with the blue blanket. He told me to say I had fallen. Denise cleaned up the broken lamp. By the time the knocking started, Caleb had become calm again. He opened the door wearing the expression that had fooled everyone for years. He told the officers his pregnant wife had suffered another confused episode and did not want visitors. Then Dad spoke from the hallway. "I want to hear that from Olivia." Caleb's face changed for less than a second. That was all I needed to see. When they entered the bedroom, Mom gasped. Noah covered his mouth. Dad walked toward me slowly, as if one sudden movement might frighten me. He asked whether he could move the blanket. I nodded. When he pulled it back, he saw the bruises Caleb had hidden. The officers saw them too. Caleb immediately said I had fallen down the stairs. Dad looked at him and asked, "All of these came from one fall?" Caleb started talking faster about sleepwalking, pregnancy hormones, and my so-called confusion. He had been rehearsing that story for months. Then I reached inside the decorative pillow and removed the recorder. I held it out to the nearest officer. "He rehearsed the wrong story," I said. The room became completely still. Denise tried to leave, but the second officer stopped her in the hallway. Caleb stared at the recorder, then at me. For the first time, I saw fear in his face. Not anger. Fear. The same fear he had trained me to live with every day. At the hospital, doctors confirmed my baby was safe and found a sedating medication that had not been prescribed to me. They documented my injuries, and a victim advocate helped me obtain an emergency protective order. Investigators found Denise's pills, the forged loan papers, the black notebook, and deleted messages from Caleb's second phone. The biggest twist came from those records. Caleb had already received $40,000 from a private lender using a forged document connected to my trust. Most of the money had gone toward gambling debts. He had not been protecting our future. He had been trying to save himself before anyone learned what he owed. Denise agreed to cooperate after prosecutors showed her the evidence. She admitted helping him drug me and isolate me. She claimed Caleb had manipulated her too. Maybe that was partly true, but she had watched me cry and kept pouring the tea. I did not forgive her. Caleb was charged with domestic violence offenses, forgery, fraud, and conduct unbecoming an officer. Months later, he accepted a deal that included prison time, repayment, and dismissal from the army. At sentencing, his attorney called him a decorated soldier whose judgment had failed under pressure. Then I stood up to speak. My hands were shaking, but my voice was clear. I told the court that Caleb's actions were not one bad decision. They were hundreds of careful decisions. He chose the pills. He chose the lies. He chose each forged message from my father. He chose to build a version of me that nobody would believe. Then I played the recording of him saying, "Nobody will believe you. Look at you." When it ended, I looked directly at him and said, "They believe me now." That was my revenge. Not hurting him. Not destroying myself to destroy him. My revenge was surviving long enough to make the truth impossible to ignore. My daughter, Grace, was born 6 weeks later. Dad held her first, while Mom sat beside me, crying into a hospital tissue. Noah placed a small blue night light near the window. It was his way of reminding me that the emergency phrase had brought them back to me. I kept the lake house. I changed the locks, painted the bedroom walls, and turned the room facing the water into a place where Grace could play. I also used part of the recovered money to help a local support program provide secure phones and emergency transportation to military spouses. Some nights, I still wake up afraid. Healing did not happen the moment Caleb was taken away. It happened slowly, in ordinary choices. The first time I drove alone. The first time I answered my own phone. The first time I made tea and drank it without wondering what was inside. People sometimes ask why I kept that blue blanket. I tell them it no longer belongs to the worst day of my life. It belongs to the day the lies ended. Caleb spent months teaching me that silence was the only way to survive. In the end, my voice was the one piece of evidence he could never bury.